Want to get close today? Yeah. Yeah. You don't need this.
All right, welcome everybody. I'll call this meeting to order. It's 9:02 a.m. Harmony Houston, as you're ready to call roll, please.
Director Bradley,
Here.
Director Brem,
Here.
Director Cardenas, Director Daly,
Here.
Director Keegley, Director Litvak, Director Olson,
Present.
Director Peterson,
Here.
Director Prokopis,
Here.
Director Silvestrini,
Here.
Director Stevenson.
All right, moving to public comments. Do we have any public comments in the room today? Do we have any online? Seeing none, I'll move into item 3, election of new leadership. Harry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The first meeting in January has certain procedural requirements, and we'll be going through some of those today. One of them is election of a new chair, and as provided for in the board rules, it is traditional but not required that it be the vice chair. And so at this point, I would ask the chair to open up the floor for nominations and go from there.
All right, I guess I'll open it up for discussion and any nominations for position.
I'd like to make a statement. I think because of the situation that we're in and the change that we're going through, all that we've been through last year, I would like to ask Marcus if he would consider continuing as chair. And I would not.
Accept the nomination.
One second.
Speak to the motion. First of all, David, that's magnanimous of you, and I agree that given the transitions that we had and all that, and this is great work for the last year, that does make sense to continue that, and you get to be it after that still, and so I support the motion and want to thank David for his magnanimity.
I too just want to thank you. I know it's been a rough year sitting in the chair seat, but I appreciate the service you've given. I think the continuity going forward is critical and keep that seat through this transition.
I would welcome another nomination. Somebody else.
I think the discussions, at least that I've had with the board members, and we could, certainly, but that seems to be the case.
Oh, I appreciate it. I don't know if I should be grateful or if I feel like the biggest sucker. I'm a little bit of mixed feelings, but I do appreciate it. It's been an interesting year, and we've got an interesting one.
I'll call the question.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, well, that happens. Okay. We will continue to move on then. Item 4, committee assignments.
Point order, could we nominate a vice chair?
That's a good point. I would open up nominations for vice chair.
I'll nominate our nominate Jeff Silvestrini for vice chair.
I'll second that. So David, do you want to do it?
Yes,
Huh?
yes.
So I would defer to David, given that he wants to do it. He was otherwise next in line.
I was hoping he would do this Lisa part, but I'll nominate David for vice chair for UPD.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second to nominate Director Brems as vice chair. Any further discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes. We're good.
I don't want to.
Close nominations.
I would ask that it's not a board office, but that there be a nomination for secretary and treasurer. It's a board appointment for secretary and treasurer that's approved by the board. So the secretary of the board has been Harmony, the treasurer, to the board, I think is that Rick or is that Debbie? Debbie, okay. That those two positions be affirmed by the board and by vote.
If there's any discussion on that.
I move to appoint secretary and Debbie as treasurer.
I'll second that.
There's a motion second, any further discussion?
Accept.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes. Congratulations. I hope that's on your resume. Put that on.
He doesn't need a resume.
That's right.
So, Mr. Chair, the next item is appointment of committee members. We do an annual review of that, and oftentimes those don't change. Obviously, at some point when the reorganization is final, we would probably want to revisit this and see the committee balanced. But at this point, we have three standing committees, which are governance, budget and finance, and benefits and compensation. And then there are a couple of specialized committees, legal evaluation, which is a committee comprised of individuals who will look at the discussion items for departing members. The interlocal committee, which pretty much has completed its work at this point, although there could be reassignment to the committee to make any changes as we go forward. The departure negotiating committee and the evaluation committee are somewhat serving the same purpose. They could probably be combined. And finally, the Operations Study Review Committee, which has been on hold, but may want to kick in as we go through the reorganization effort, have members on them. So I would just ask if the board wants to take a look at reorganizing any of those committee members or revisit this perhaps on the date of the reorganization.
We have.
I would recommend that we stay as is. That they.
That's a motion, I'll second.
A motion and a second to keep committees as is, at least until this reorganization is complete. Any further discussion on that? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
And the thing that I would say about these committees too is that their meetings are noticed. So if we have a quorum, it's not a problem. And if anybody wants to attend a committee meeting, it's obviously open. So.
Item 5 will reappoint Chris Bertrand to a 6-month term on the UPD Police Officer Merit Commission Resolution 401.
Morning, Mr. Chair. Should be brief. It was brought to our attention that Commissioner Bertram's term has expired. And to that end, we need to your approval to reappoint him for a term of 6 months. Our thought was we would do that through the end of June. And then as the Peace Officer Merit Commission is reorganized for UPD going forward, we would at that point determine who those new commissioners will be if they change at all, and then have you reappoint them at that time. So this is just a 6-month term is what we're asking for. And I've spoken to Commissioner Bertram, and he is very much agreeable to staying on board and helping us out for that term.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if there's a reason not to do this, but I would recommend that we extend his term for 7 or 8 months. If not longer, but I think that we're going to see changes in the organization. It's actually the county's departure is July 1, and I think it makes sense to do the appointments of those things on an ongoing basis after that departure date. So that's why I would move that we extend the date to at least 7 months, if not longer, so that we do that reappointment process after the reorganization is in place.
Mayor, if I could, the concern I have about that is that the current commission he's on is set up by statute. It's the Peace Officers Merit Commission for counties of the first class. And when the county is no longer a part of UPD, the statutory authority for that board expires, and it would become a county-based merit system commission, and our ability to appoint anybody to that expires at the same time. So what I would just indicate is that I think what we could look at as we get closer to the date is submitting names to this body. So there's no break in continuity as to who the merit commissioners are in terms of the new UPD merit system. But I do think that there's going to be that's one of the clean breaks we have, is that under the statute, when the county is no longer a member of the UPD, then the ability to have to use that commission expires as well.
So we're going to be reappointing everybody in July.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
And should an incident or something rise to the level of the merit commission, would it not go back to the merit commission at the time?
No. It would be whichever merit commission is empowered to hear matters arising from the UPD. So even if it arose prior to that date, I believe that the authority of the merit commission to act on behalf of the UPD expires at the same time Sullivan County departs the UPD. That's my reading of the statute.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on
Then I'll
that?
make a motion to appoint Mr. Bertrand to the 6-month term in June 30.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And this request for 2024 annual open and public meetings act training and board member training certificates.
So this is, I appreciate this. This can be real quick. We've gone through this every year. So each one of your entities should be already providing you with training. It's available on the state auditor's website for training for open meetings for interlocal entities. And what we need is a certification that you've taken the training, but you don't need it twice. It's simply one training will govern your ability to serve on a board as well as your current office. So just ask that at some point that you take that training, preferably within the next 2 weeks, and get us the certification that you've taken it, because we have to maintain that in our files for both audit purposes as well as compliance with Utah.
Is there a form that you have drafted for that?
It's actually given when you complete the training. It's something you can print off that says you completed the auditor's training. And I think that's correct, isn't it, Gio?
Because some of us get the training through a presentation, like I've had it through a presentation to our council. I've had it a number of times. So that's not the auditor's test thing, but we've had the training. So it may just be a certification.
Cities and towns of the Association of Special Districts can provide it.
It may be a separate training for interlocals and boards. I think there is a separate training for that, but I believe that as long as you've received Open and Public Meeting Act training, it probably will be sufficient to cover that. I'll try to send out an email.
Yeah, so the open meeting training is different than the board.
Yeah. But the certification for that, it can be given either from the auditor's office or something you obtain from your entity. So if you received Open and Public Meeting Act training, just get to me what you have. And if there's any questions, I'll get back to you. But it's something that is an annual training that every serving member of a public body has to take. So please do that. And that one was under 5 minutes.
All
All
right,
right, quick question. What is required certifications of city board members?
Is that you've taken the training.
Okay, open meetings, but there's other things that are also required, like,
There is a board training
Ethics.
that's required, through the auditor's office that board members have to take. Those periodically, and that's different than the.
I believe that's a one-time training when you are nominated to serve on a board, you take that one once. Now, it may have a 2-year renewal requirement. I'll look that up. The one that's annual is the Open and Public Meetings Act training.
thank you. Item 7 is the annual UPD ethics pledge.
I'm just sitting here in case you. I'll put down what it is.
You're up next anyway.
Thank you again. Before you, in your packets, each of you has the annual UPD ethics pledge form. I've also included the policy that is related to that for your review if you'd like. As part of our annual audit process, this form is required for all UPD employees and anyone that does business with UPD. There's contract employees, volunteers, etc. So we're simply asking that each of you take the time to review that form, fill it out, and sign it today. You're kind of a captive audience, so we thought we'd get that done while you're here. And then we will be rolling this out to the remaining parts of the office via email this afternoon. So are there any questions related to the ethics pledge? Thank you. I'll collect those after we're done. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Item 8, amendments to resolution 23-12.
Thank you. We had discussed this in the last board meeting regarding an amendment to reflect that there's the date for changing the policy to allow somebody to separate or resign who has already qualified to obtain any sick leave payout. When we took the date of November 8th on the previous one, it resulted in one person in the fiscal year who left before that, who didn't get the benefit of this. And just feel this is an equity issue that we take it back to the beginning of the fiscal year. We don't want to go farther back than that, but that affects only one person, and didn't feel it was appropriate to single out one person from this change during this fiscal year. So the request here is to make an amendment to date it to July 1, 2023. We've looked, there are no other individuals who qualify other than the person that left in October. I think it was September. So with that in mind, it's just a request to amend that so we're not singling out one person. And I don't think there was, I think there was an issue with the previous resolution that this is to try to correct that.
Any questions, discussion on that?
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 24-1-05 of 2024 to change the effective date.
We have questions. Or second?
was that the right resolution?
Yes, I had to add it as number 5 because all of the resolutions.
Okay.
He's reading
I got 23-12.
it. Yeah, it's amending now.
Okay, I'm with you. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Doesn't matter that that was listed as a different number on the agenda. An issue here.
Pardon?
That was listed as a different number resolution on the agenda.
So the agenda
But it was amending.
resolution is the original, so we're saying amending that resolution.
I'm sorry.
Um,
I just wanted to make sure we weren't in any. That we had them as different.
Question 2, so that's.
Oh, I didn't hear the question. So, okay, thank you.
All right, item 9, vote.
Morning. So we know you have a very full agenda, so we'll try to make this brief. So VOCA is requiring that we present to the UPD board twice a year. And so the purpose of this is to educate the board on what our program looks like and how the program is vital to our community, as well as any budget forecasts or updates. Just a brief background, because we've gone over this before. VOCA is our Victim of Crime Act grant. It's a federal grant that helps pay for our 5 victim advocates' salary and benefits, as well as emergency funds. It's VOCA currently in a 2-year cycle, and we are in year 1 of that cycle. Our victim advocates assist in a wide range of services, including but not limited to the criminal justice process, victims' rights, law enforcement interviews, crisis intervention, and interpreter services. And with me here today, I have Sergeant Mike Mays and Tessa Cole, Mill Creek victim advocate, and I will just let them share a few words on who they are and what they do.
Just a brief introduction. I'm Sergeant Mike Mays. I'm primarily assigned as an investigations supervisor for the city of Mill Creek. With a secondary assignment of domestic violence coordinator for Unified Police Department, and been serving in that capacity for the past 3 years. Some of my responsibilities include ensuring that our DD policy, procedures, and accompanying forms are up to date, done by monitoring legislative changes. We will hold meetings throughout the year with our individual precinct detectives and advocates to address any changes or areas of concern. I'm responsible for coordinating pre-service and in-service trainings throughout the year. Meet regularly with our community-based partners, and presently I report directly to Chief Dial and Chief Nazarene.
Good morning. My name is Tessa. I am the Mill Creek victim advocate. I served Mill Creek City since December of 2012 and have 25 years of law enforcement victim services under my belt. So we do serve a variety of victims. All person crimes do route to the advocates. So I do work homicide cases, sex offense cases, child abuse, arson, DUIs, and elder abuse. So quite a range, but if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything for you.
I'll just say that I want to thank both you guys. We can get back to work in Mill Creek in a minute, but I want to thank you guys for what you do. I know that that you're both very effective and it's an important service that our department provides to people.
Thank you. Item 10, UPD update. And James.
Morning. Just a couple of updates before I turn the time over to Mark here. Just wanted to let you know that we had a homicide out in Midvale that our victims, our victim is deceased. It was a tough homicide for everybody to go on, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys understand some of the resources that are involved in this type of thing. I know Midvale you do because you were probably briefed, but I want the board to know how difficult it is to investigate those types of vicious crimes. And I want to recognize that I saw Sergeant Von Allen in the room, and he usually doesn't attend these, or I don't see him attend these, but he oversees this unit. And they do an incredible job. Right now, they're out on carjacking out in Kearns. And I just wanted to recognize the work that they do, because it's so, it's such a variety of work, because there's so many different types of violent crimes, and our violent crimes unit responds. But the fact that they, have to deal with these critical incidences all the time. And many times we don't recognize them enough, except maybe once a year for our awards. But I saw him in the room, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys know who he is, because he does oversee it, and recognize that team. So also, Kearns had a critical incident with the car accident this past week. They did an amazing job responding. A 4-year-old was in very, very critical condition, and many others injured. possibly a DUI, but wanted to recognize Kearns precinct for their response. Magna helped. Just a lot going on with the current operations. I just wanted to recognize them. I also want to recognize Torrin Chambers, Lieutenant Chambers out of Kearns. He is just accepted to the FBI National Academy. He doesn't get to go until 2026, but that's a big deal. We, our last one was April Morris, who just graduated recently from that, but I just wanted to recognize that he's been accepted and we're super proud of him and look forward to seeing what he does with his career after. With that, I do want to say that there's a lot of legislation going on. As you know, the session started. We have our lobbyist. She's on Heather's online. I see her there, but they're up there all the time, making sure they're watching to see what impacts law enforcement. There's a lot of bills that will impact law enforcement this year, but we'll keep you updated as we go on. The session just started, so it's really tough to just do an update yet, but we'll ask her to come back and brief you all on what's occurring there with law enforcement. But I know there's a lot of sexual assault bills, a retirement bill, just multiple things going on up there. So just want to keep you guys updated. And then I wanted to let you know that we're working the split is tough. And we recognize that. I want to recognize Captain Dwayne Angel Weirden because he's in a position where he oversees records and evidence. And that is going to be a massive haul of how we do this split. So, kudos to him for what he's currently doing, but it's going to take a lot of work and his expertise to help us, both agencies, get to where we need to be. And just wanted to recognize him as well and let you know what kind of massive work that's going to be. It's a lot of evidence, lots of records that were brought over prior to the inception of UPD, and all that has to be split up. So there's still a lot going on with that as well. Then I'm going to just turn the time over to Mark if you don't, unless you have questions on any of that. If not, I'll turn my time over to Mark so you can talk about the human resources staffing.
Thank you, Sharon. Just wanted to give you a brief update on our staffing for where we're at currently. I mean, if you could put that up on the screen for me. So behind you here on the screen is our dashboard that is available to all of the commanders at any time. I update this at least weekly, trying to update it more often if possible. But as you can see, currently we are down a grand total of 12 people. We have 10 people that are encumbering positions for training. So they are in various stages of the training process. Most of those will be done with training in April. We do have one lateral that will be done in February. I believe he's slated to go to Kearns if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, this is ever changing. It changes almost daily in some instances. But you can take a look at your respective precincts and divisions there and see where we're at. If you guys ever need this, it's available. I'm happy to email it to you at any time. Just contact me. At the bottom of the screen there is our candidate pipeline. This is kind of what we have in the works right now. We do have one LEO certified candidate awaiting a final interview. That will happen next week. And we're looking at a target hire date of March as our next targeted hiring. Unfortunately, we can't just hire whenever we want to. We have processes after the hire for training and things that we have to coordinate. So we try and do that in larger groups. That's why the date's a little bit further out there. We also have 2 lateral candidates that are in the background process, and then 3 entry-level candidates that are in the background process. Again, those targeted hire dates are March 25th. And then again, You can see in January, we had 4 entry-level applicants. They're awaiting a PT test. That'll happen first week in February. And then 2 lateral applicants that we received in January that are waiting for their first interview, which will also happen. So that's kind of where we are. Are there any questions with that?
Sorry, was that candidate pipeline, is that different from the 10 above, or is that
Yes, that's the 10 above are already hired in the training process.
right? So that's an additional.
Yeah, the ones below are just applicants at this point.
To address the 12.
Yes.
One thing that jumps out at me is technical services division. Is there any reason there's so many in just that one division?
Yes, so those positions are actually being held open in anticipation of a reduction in force there through this reorganization. So as we're having attrition there, we've opted not to backfill those. Harvey, if you can go to the second tab there in our annual attrition report. This is kind of interesting. So if you can scroll over to the right side there. So you can see in 2023, our annual attrition, we lost 34 people in 2023 total. 11 of those were retirements, 15 were resignations, 5 were terminations, and I can't remember, I can't remember what the other 2 are there. It's on the other side of the screen. Can you shrink that down just a little bit, Harmony? So retired and moved, there was 1. Or deceased, there was 1, and retired and 2. So we did lose 1 officer out of Kearns last year, unfortunately. For 2024, so far, we've lost 4 people this month, 2 to retirements, 1 was unfortunately didn't make it through field training. It was a brand new hire, and just unfortunately just wasn't getting there. So decided to separate him. And then the other one was a conduct, and that officer resigned in lieu of termination. So that's kind of where we are. You can see the averages there throughout the years. And so there's anomalies in each year. You know, we've lost organizations like Riverton and Harriman and Taylorsville. So that kind of skewed those numbers a little bit, but you can kind of get a sense of what we're doing here. Any questions with any of that? Okay, and then the monthly report is simply a month, it's the same information. So for January 24, we lost more.
Quick question, do we know the current organization and what would be full staffing between sworn and civilian? And when we actually transition, the organizational chart that UPD currently
exist. As they fill those from our ranks, that's a draw on our UPD's staffing.
Be going full steam ahead and trying to fill slot, because when the dust settles, we're down still.
The other factor of that is it takes so long to move people through that hiring pipeline, that if we stop, try and restart that process later, will take an immense amount of time.
I agree. Thank you.
I have a question with maybe a perception of some uncertainty in this organization. Is the pipeline of new interest and new people remaining constant?
It has dwindled significantly, I can tell you, since this reorganization was announced last March. It has dwindled. We are to a point of stability. We're seeing about 5 to 6 applicants a month. Pretty much where we're at right now.
And just so you know, that's across the county, across the state, country. Everybody's experiencing that same thing. So, you know, we can look at it as maybe it's the split that's creating that, but also look at how many people are actually leaving the UPD. You're not seeing. That was, you know, described early on that it's going to be masses leave, and that hasn't occurred. So, you know, we've been very, very fortunate that our folks are staying and they're loyal. To your question, Mayor Dolly, the county is presenting the org chart at the school visa board meeting today. So those numbers of staffing have been given to Chief Mazarin, and he's taken a look at that. We do meet every single Monday and discuss the staffing and what we're going to do with promotions, hiring, and we discuss that at the UPD meeting every Monday. So as a group.
Yeah, I was just curious, you know, if the county does have theirs completed, I know UPD's is really, I mean, it's just tweaking at this point. So we have a good ballpark. So do we know what those numbers are? Like, do we know what the net increase is going to be based on at least the initial organizational charts?
I just saw the org chart yesterday, but we will probably the next couple of weeks post the models and have projections for all of you to look at what both extremes look like in the middle. So I'll be working with HR, Chief Dial, which we've already done this exercise about 6 or 7 months ago. And now that we have some better data, we'll redo it. Which you know.
You know, we also understand that because we still don't know who's going where, those numbers get adjusted a lot. So it's still, you know, we can predict, but until we actually know where everybody's going to land, that's a challenge. And that's why we are trying to still continue going full speed, because we're not getting the amount of applicants that we used to. So we just have to stay on top of it.
Speaking of on this topic, would you just give an update on what we approved for the second watch commander? Where it's at, I know, if I'm remembering correctly, we're going to speed up that process for the testing and just an update on if we filled that position and then where we're at.
Yes, it has been filled. That new lieutenant, Lieutenant Mike Lee, is the second acting watch commander. That happened about a month ago.
As soon as the decision was here.
Right. So that's been filled, and then all that downline backfilling has already occurred as well.
But we did exhaust the lieutenants.
We
list,
did, yes,
so-
I did exhaust our current list. Lieutenant Lord is working with a group now to put together the second interim lieutenant's test. That will take place in February. We're hoping to have a certified list for lieutenants at the end of February.
And where, I hope this question makes sense, as we were going through that process, we're talking about it would leave an opening, a vacancy somewhere down the line as people moved up. Where did that vacancy?
That's one of the 12 that's in that staffing report. One of those vacancies. So everything trickles down to that entry level officer at some point. We do have 2 openings currently, one in investigations for Chief Homeby that has not been backfilled, and one in special operations for Sergeant Blanton, who was our mortar sergeant. That has not been backfilled. So those 2 are running vacant in anticipation of this reorganization. The rationale for not backfilling Chief Omby was that special operations in our working org chart, special operations and investigations will be combined. So it'll be one chief over both of those, so we don't want to backfill chief in investigations and then have to demote somebody down. If that makes any sense at all.
I might be oversimplifying this. Is there, do we have the ability to pinpoint like, oh, that was a middle person that was kind of last to get promoted up, and so that left a vacancy in maybe or any other?
I can do that evaluation if you'd like.
Mostly I'm curious.
In this particular case, I can tell you when Sergeant Lee was promoted to lieutenant, we backfilled his position with Sergeant Lindy Dawson. She came from Magna. I'm sorry, from Kearns, is where she came from. And so her backfill was Sergeant Jared Nichols, who came from Mill Creek as a patrolman. So that patrol allocation ended up in Mill Creek in this particular case. But that's kind of how that works.
As we fill vacancies throughout this transition, we're being proactive and looking down at what we don't want, obviously, is to ever have to demote somebody.
Right.
To end up heavy at any one rank,
Yes.
including the bottom and being riffed.
Yeah, and that's exactly why some of those
Very
vacancies.
critical of every promotion from here forward to avoid that from happening on either side.
That's definitely something Chief Mazarin is looking at,
Good.
in consultation with myself, Chief Dial. We're very aware of that.
When we
issue.
meet on Monday, that's what we discuss.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're here from Chief Mazarin, the reorganization.
Thanks, board members. I'll make my update brief and we'll schedule. Just to kind of follow up on what Mark was talking about. We're entering a period of time where we're getting more solid data than we've had in terms of what's happening. Sheriff's met with townships and see if that unfold. We get farther down into the process of reorganization, looking at things like hiring, promoting, all these things, and making assessments of that. We've been planning on doing this for a long time, thinking just about to that time. So I'll be working closely with and Chief Dial, HR, the sheriff, and balance all that to make sure we do this in a way that's minimum amount of disruption and not any disruption to service, especially. So I'm confident we'll be able to do that. We talked about it, plan for, discuss strategies on how to implement that. And so we're getting to that point here very quickly. Two items I want to bring to your attention. One is we've finished our initial assessment of the facilities that UPD has and looked at the space and the resources we have in all those different areas. We met as recently as yesterday to start looking at how we would plug units into the different buildings or precincts that would be available to us in anticipation of having to move out of this building at some point where we would do things like training or we'd have more meetings, some of those different things. We are working on that, and when that gets closer to a place for, or when it gets closer to being finished, I'll present that to all of you so that you can see what it looks like. We would essentially have shared services personnel in almost every precinct with the exception of Magna, and that's just because Magna has no room for any more bodies. But Chief Craig's done a great job working on some other projects like the range and other really critical functions that we have to find places for. So,
Yeah, real quick, do you have we're coming up on a quick timeline, just, do you have it in your mind of when that will come to the board of more of I guess, initial decision of where, as far as space goes, what we're doing to make sure that we've got
yeah, I'd like to do it next month. But you know, obviously we also need to see how the townships are going to play out, so. Yeah, the sooner the better, and start planning for that sooner than later. The next thing is probably our most important project that we're working on. like to ask Debbie if she wants to come up. We've been working on the budget. It's going well. We've had tremendous cooperation from our commanders and staff. Over the last about 8 days, we've met with everybody. I think our last one was yesterday. We're getting together just preliminary piece of the budget. We'll be meeting with commanders again, and probably the third time. We want to triple check this and make sure it's very accurate. And it includes everything you need to know. I asked Debbie, maybe she could just speak to the process and kind of what we're doing and what she's doing in the timeline for that.
Yes, so as you can imagine, it's a challenge trying to make sure things don't fall through the cracks just through the normal budget process. So with this being a new restructured organization, we were trying to figure out how we're going to prepare a budget for it. So what we did is we reached a point where the commanders felt they couldn't scale back anymore and have an effective organization. So we thought, okay, at this point, it's not final, but at least we could start developing a budget for it. And so to give them an idea of what past budgets look like, because now under the new organization, you know, we're down one chief. So units are being scaled together. So we went back and we did a 3-year history. We gave them a 3-year average. We presented that to them, and then they came back with their budgets, their operational budgets. The other thing we looked at, was we wanted to make sure that we didn't miss any positions. You know, in the past, we've had a little bit of issues with that, with like with the watch commander or with Slavisa when we were missing the 2 officers in Kearns and in Magna. So we took that organization chart and we met with each of the commanders and we asked them to give us an idea of actual names on who would be filling those positions. And then we took those names and we took their actual salaries and we projected those into the budget. So in the past, what we've done is we've taken an average for each position. And then from that, because there's so much movement throughout the year, we took a percentage of that. So last year it was like 96%. So this year we decided we would do actual salaries and actual benefits. And the reason for that is we were trying to stay within this established increase that the board had given, almost the initial preliminary budget increase maximum at 7%. And we were able to get to that 7% overall, but certain precincts were getting hit harder than others. So we're trying to get that so that it's more stable across the board. So we're hoping that with these actual salaries, actual benefits, with the new operations budget, we can get to that point. And that's what we did. We finished meeting with all of the commanders yesterday. We're now going to plug all those numbers into the overall budget, see how that falls out. We're really way ahead of our budget schedule right now, but that's just because we didn't know when, you know, how long it was going to take. So in anticipation of needing to have this, we've been working hard on this. So we've got most of the numbers in. Rick is still working because under the new structure, he's got to look at, you know, the vehicles that we're going to be keeping. So we've got the vehicle maintenance numbers that we hope will be complete by the end of this week. And then maybe by next week, we could have a draft budget ready for the board.
Any questions for Debbie? Appreciate the work from the business staff. We really have been hitting the afterburners on this. It's very important that we have it to you by the first meeting in March. I anticipate it will be earlier. How are you going to pull the return? So as we've gone through this process and here's the most recent version, subject to change, or draft. For January 10th, and some of those changes took place because of the budget meeting and we were continuing to tweak things. But I think you, Mayor Silver Street, said we're just at the point where it's just small, tiny adjustments, which tells me this is probably pretty close to what your organization is going to look like, unless for some reason, we need to make some more cuts, but we'll figure that out as we move down the road. Again, this is just a model, it's just projecting the assumption that townships would stay with UPD. Then that's what it would look like if for some reason they were to contract the sheriff's office or another entity or whatever happened, we would extract those pieces out. And we've got it built out pretty good up in the kind of the top right, you see that gray box, that gives you your totals there. 344, 270 sworn, 67 civilians. So we'll take this org chart. Hopefully in the next 48 hours, I can get a copy of the county's org chart, and then we can sit down and start to make those projections that you're talking about, Mayor. And look at both extremes. If we had everybody go over to the county, what that would look like. If we had half, if we had nobody, what does that look like? And then that will guide some more decision-making of promoting hiring. That needs to be done quickly. So that's another important project. Budget's number one right now. The second, we want to pull up that financial document. I just wanted to make a clarification on. No, not that one. On left there, the CT draft. Yeah, so a lot of you have seen this already, and this has been out circulated. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any misunderstanding. This is not the budget. The budget is the first, actually, the exhibit Harmony actually pull up. That is one of the budget worksheets. This, just for the purposes of clarification, so it's really clear, this is only a tool for projecting or building models to look at the 7%. So this is not the actual budget. This is a tool that helps us figure out where we're at. If we need to throttle up, throttle it up.
So if we can go back to.
Yeah, go back to the other worksheet. Yeah, this is the budget. Go ahead.
So this is the one that we gave the commanders, going back, looking at their 3-year actual, and then their current budget, and then projecting, on those far, right columns, what the fiscal 25-year budget would look like. And you can scroll that up, Harmony. And more, yeah, down, there we go. And then that gives us a summary for salaries and wages and all of the breakouts there. And then the bottom is what shows the positions that are in each of those precincts or in each of the units within the shared services. And what we've asked, we will be sending this out now to all of the commanders, and what we're asking them to do is make sure that each position that was in that organization chart that Matt's just showed up matches what's on here, and that way we make sure that there aren't any positions that are missing. And then the salaries and the wages are based again on actual numbers rather than averages. But this is how we're working on the new format we're working on this year to try and make sure that we can catch everything that hopefully we don't have too many things that are falling through the cracks.
So yeah, this is the first iteration of that. Like I said, going back to commanders, then we're going to meet back again. We're going to go through probably meet a third time because it's very important. This document is comprehensive and accurate, and we'll be able to see what the numbers are. And like I said, the previous slide you saw before that, that is just a tool to try to figure out, to just play with the numbers and figure out where we're at. That's all I have. Want to just mention appreciation for the fiscal staff, appreciation for the support from the board. Well, great. Appreciate the support of the sheriff, everybody else who's worked really hard. We had a little interruption there for the holidays. People really worked hard to make this thing work. It's not been an easy project. The challenging officers and our civilian support staff and everybody's come together to try to help where they can with it. So very appreciated. Again, appreciate the support from the board.
all I got in this, any questions? Thank you. So I had a question. A big component of our employees is, benefits and compensation. This, we haven't even really factored into anything that I've seen or heard for the next year for the employees yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
We want to get you some
Somebody's
numbers.
salary surveys and stuff for moving forward.
I'm not sure, is that, is anything?
That's something we did annually. I assumed we did.
Yeah, we usually start that talk in February when we have the benefits and compensation meeting. But yeah, we haven't. No conversations yet.
And we'll work with. Part of that process.
And actually, we try to compare to other agencies. And in the last couple of years, the other agencies are waiting to see what UPD does. So that's the challenge of trying to figure out, okay, how much is the other agencies going to bump people up? But that's something that we're always trying to watch and see. You know, just like a wage wars occurred. That's the biggest challenge is that every meeting we go to and wages across the board are talked about. Everybody's sitting back waiting to see what UPD is going to do.
Yeah, it's important that we keep our eye on that. We're targeting that 7% increase. Yet we haven't even factored in any increase for the employees, so.
But it's a great point, and like, I think we're gonna have plenty of time to do that, because this process is moving faster, not in a reckless way. We're ahead of schedule, it's going smoothly, we're getting great cooperation. People are just dialed in, so I think we're gonna be, have plenty of time to make, the board will have plenty of time to make some of those decisions. Any other questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Item 12, Salt Lake County law enforcement bureau update.
Morning, everybody. Full schedule, so I'll try to move quickly. We are making a lot of progress on the county side. We are working to finalize our budget. We're very, very close. And org chart, as the sheriff said earlier, we're going to be presenting that. So we a meeting after this meeting. Additionally, we're working with our merit commission and labor to establish our hiring process for all ranks. And we anticipate that beginning in February, that process, so that both sides can get some clarification as to who is interested in leaving and coming over to the sheriff's office and who will be remaining.
So I'll just mention that I think it's important that there be good communication between you and the UPD side in terms of staffing. And that to the extent, I mean, I know that individually they can make their own decisions, but you know, particularly with respect to administrative personnel and things like that, I hope there'll be good communication about that so that neither side is disadvantaged by surprises. And that there's, you know, the command staff work to the extent it can to smooth that.
Agreed.
Any other questions, comments?
Thank you.
All right, item 13, your local community update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We started working on the interlocal update or I guess doing the restated and interlocal many months ago. And I really want to thank each of your entities for supplying their attorneys and having their expertise and input on this. I want to also thank the committee members for numerous meetings to try to figure out essentially the best way to reorganize the UPD. And so when we look at where we are now, we've gone through numerous drafts, numerous changes, and we're to the point now that I think we have agreed upon language for what the interlocal will say and what it will look like. I am simply presenting it today as I think the near final work of the interlocal committee. Obviously, it can change still. I'm not asking this board to vote on it today. It's just a opportunity for you to take the interlocal back to your various entities. If there are changes we need to make, we still can. But the goal that we set months ago was to try to have this approved by February and submitted to councils for approval by March. So that by March, we know who's in, who's not in, and then from that point forward, we can go forward with what will be the reorganized UPD. So with that in mind, I will just outline a couple of changes since it was last submitted based upon comments from various attorneys. We had a provision in here regarding the chief's appointment authority for precinct chiefs and ability to transfer at the suggestion of Kearns and also based upon some concerns Midvale have. That will now be governed by board policy that will be approved by the board and can be changed by the board rather than go through an interlocal amendment every time that changes. So that's one of the changes that have happened since we were last here. The second one has to do with some immunity language that Paul brought to my attention as something that he felt that would more conform to what the language sought by the insurer for most of your entities agreed to. We went back and forth on it a little bit and we agreed to some language that's in the latest draft. There is also a provision that allows UPD's recognized labor representative to nominate somebody for the new merit commission. And that would still be subject to board approval. And there are some additional provisions in the addendum to indicate that a member of the new merit commission cannot be an employee of the UPD or any of its members or a member of any board of a labor organization, so that they will retain their independence otherwise, and which is something we've done traditionally, but it's spelled out in there right now. So those are the major changes since we last talked about it. I'd ask that you now run this by your council again and your council EL as well as IL. And start reviewing it for changes. And I think it's important that all of us know as soon as possible who is going to approve this and be with the UPD and who has decided that they're going to go another direction so that we can finalize a reorganization going forward. So this is something that we could discuss in a special board meeting or leave it on the February agenda. I leave that to you to decide. I don't know how many questions there have been. I know that most of your entities have been involved in the drafting of this already, so there shouldn't be a lot of surprises to anybody. But I would leave that to the board to decide. If you're getting pushback or questions and you want to set a meeting, we can set a special board meeting in February to talk about it. But I think in the committee meeting, we had decided that probably wouldn't be necessary because of the involvement of all the entities thus far in the drafting process.
So, as chair, let me just say, if I can, I think we've had great participation on this interlocal committee from almost all of the entities that are members of UPD. The only, or prospectively will be, right? The county has not been involved. Council for all the entities except I think Brighton and Emigration Canyon have been involved almost the whole way in terms of the discussions about these issues that we've had respecting the governance provisions of the interlocal. So I'm hopeful that we won't have a lot of questions or concerns. If Emigration Canyon's council or Brighton's council do have questions, what I would encourage you to do is ask your council to reach out either to me or to Harry, because we can take them through what we have deliberated on with respect to this and the reasons for some of the things that we have changed slightly. This local is fundamentally pretty much the same as what it was before, but we have made some changes. Like Harry mentioned, there was some concern about each entity having the appropriate amount of say about who their chief was, right? And so the iteration of that discussion was fundamentally, in order to have accountability for the precincts to the chief of police, the chief of police has to be, has to have a huge say in who the precinct's chiefs are. However, as individual communities, we do want to have some input about that. And so what we ultimately decided to do is, rather than have that be in the interlocal, to have it be a board policy, so it'd be more flexible. But the concept that we're going with in the board policy will likely reflect that there is advice and consent by the individual municipality with respect to the chief. And that decision can be made fundamentally jointly, which, when you get right down to it, that's the way it's always been. And that's the only way it will ever work, is for there to be, some consensus between the chief of police and the community. But we don't want to give the community's decision so much weight that we lose the accountability that comes through a chain of command, where the precinct chiefs need to be accountable to the chief of police in order for the agency to work properly. So that's the kind of explanation I would give to your council about that. Doesn't mean we can't change it. Doesn't mean convincing arguments can't be made to modify provisions, but I think we're pretty much there. And I feel it's important that we send this out now, basically give your councils and both councils, ILs and ELs, the opportunity to take a look at this and get back with any final changes. But I would really like to push for adoption of this, at least a board recommendation to send this out to our members at our February meeting. And then hopefully we get ratification of that agreement by our city, municipal councils, township councils in March, so that we know we have an interlocal, our officers know we have the interlocal, and we know who's in. We need to know who's in. The sheriff needs to know who's in or out in order to move forward. We've kind of been in this, until we know that for sure, it's almost impossible to do budgets and things like that. So in order to meet our calendar, we have to do that. So just ask for everybody's cooperation on that. You're going to be getting the agreement, and fire away if you have questions.
Just one thing, so this is an amendment of the current interlocal to create the amended and restated, which means that it first goes to the board and then is submitted to the council. That's why I'm submitting it requesting it go to the board in February for approval, and then it would go out to the councils for ratification. Under current law, without that ratification by the councils, of course, that wouldn't constitute an amendment. It has to be ratified by your councils in order to bind the entities to the new interlocal. So that's what we're asking for. And obviously, as soon as it's passed, to submit it. That's why we want to have a 30-day period for everybody to look at it, answer any questions. And I know Polly is here, and she's been involved in our drafting process. I'm not sure where she said, yeah, she's also been involved on behalf of Immigration in Brighton. And we were a little slow to involve her. That was an oversight, but that she has been involved for a few months now. And so I don't think there are any surprises in there on behalf of you. Same with Slovisa. We've been updating their council as well. So I think at this point, it's like I said, ready for review and submission to the board in February, but we can discuss changes, and if there are significant changes that come back, we can reconvene the committee to talk about them and maybe make a recommendation to the board if we're going to approve any additional changes. And as much as there have been multiple eyes on this, there's always the possibility that there's a word or something that doesn't belong. And so we're doing an in-depth review to avoid that. I think we've avoided that, but I honestly know that it's possible with all of this language changing that something didn't get changed right. And we still want to make sure that what goes to the board and goes to the councils in February is the final document. So if there are any questions, I can answer them. If not, we can wait and see if we get supplemental questions. And I think any questions asked by any member should be shared with the board so that you're all aware of the questions and answers. If it's an explanation, if it's a suggested change to it, I'll work with Mayor Silvestrini to decide if we need a committee meeting to discuss the change, and we'll schedule that between now and the next board meeting.
Sure. I have a question. So review for a month, come back here, resolution for us to adopt or whatever, push it out to each council.
Yes.
Needs to be 100% approval coming back, or how does that work?
Well, if it's not approved coming back, it's the entity is not going to be a member of the new UPD. So that's essentially the process that even if the board amendment, without an approval of the council, that entity is not essentially saying to us that they're not going to be a part of the UPD. So nobody's going to be dragged in. Nobody's going to be dragged in, you know, involuntarily because of a board approval. It has to be approved by their council as well.
I know Paul's been heavily involved with us
Yes.
for Magna. Are you comfortable with him presenting it to my council much better than I would, or you planning to make the rounds?
I have indicated in previous meetings, I will come to any council that anybody requests me to come to and explain this. The attorneys have already been involved in it, and I think they would be the best source to present it. But if anybody wants me to come, just give me a little advance notice and I'll be there.
I would just say I would like to see a Cliff Notes version of finding changes, just a one pager for those non-attorneys. And my council, I think, as we just.
We have been sending those out to the committee members to make it go to the whole board. I just don't want to send all of the previous communications out because it may get confusing in the draft we've been writing about it. Yeah,
Any good changes between that version and this version in the one page?
Okay, that's easy to do.
Thank you.
So just to reiterate, asking that everyone gets this scheduled with their councils in whichever way that fits best for your community, get any recommended, any changes that come out of that to Harry as soon as possible, so that by the time this comes in February, we hopefully have the draft that would be ratified.
Yeah, and I think we've gone we've made a ton of progress and changes back and forth already. I really think that we've discussed the changes. There have been changes based upon what is a consensus rather than what, you know, somebody necessarily wants, but what is a document we can all agree to. So even if there have been some disagreements along the way, I believe that what we have here now is a document that at least has been, you know, generally agreed to by the committee members and by attorneys representing all of the entities of the UPD. And we've had members of the county also participating, at least online, monitoring this. So I think everybody has been apprised of the changes that they've gone through already. So hopefully we are at their final, or maybe we are at final. And we'll find out if there are any questions or concerns, and we'll bring those back. If it delays it to the point that it's not ready by the February meeting, I would strongly suggest a special meeting first week of March to ratify it, or to pass it by the board and request that everybody do it in March. But I think we can get this done because the process has been very inclusive for all the entities. So I don't see any new surprises coming out unless there's just an objection raised in a council or two to a provision that is a non-starter, at which point then we can talk about what we do about it.
Yeah, and if I can make an ask here, to the legal counsel for each entity, it would be a good idea to approach these councils in February and get them a briefing at least about what this is, so that there aren't a bunch of questions in March that push the decision off. I mean, it really is important that we know who's going to join. So I think a briefing to councils in February about this, once you get the draft in your hands, would be useful.
All right. Did that also include the presentation of drafting our local staff?
Pardon?
We had two items referring to the interlocal.
Yeah, the presentation is just what was sent out to the board as the, now I would call final draft, even though it's not the final that will be submitting to approval. What we want to do is get it out there so that everyone can look at it and determine at least, and this is sort of the draft that the committee, I think, is the consensus draft. Wouldn't mean it's final, but it means that it's the consensus as to what to have reviewed and determine if there are provisions in there that are bothersome or something, we can come back and deal with them as soon as possible. So we'll be very flexible in terms of scheduling and working with this and discussing it, and And please, if there are questions or concerns within your councils, let us know what those are so we can address those as quickly as possible, either through an in-person meeting or through a committee meeting to discuss ways to arrive at a consensus document. So I'm not asking for any action on this, just here it is, and we'll follow up. Aye.
Okay, well, with that, I'll move into UPD reorganization discussion. I don't have anything to add beyond what we just talked about, making sure that it's back to communities, but I'll leave them. Comments. Okay. Item 16, approval of surplus resolution 240113.
Good morning. This is relative to 5 vehicles surplusing. Just point of note, Salt Lake City came to us several months ago because of some fleet issues that they were having. To purchase our surplus vehicles. We have sold 32 of those vehicles, and this completes that sale to Salt Lake City. On average, they're about $24,000 a vehicle, which is about $10,000 per vehicle more than we generally receive at auction. So this has been a very positive for us, and hopefully positive for Salt Lake City, where they have some fleet issues. So it was a good thing for us and helping them out as well. And we benefited financially by those sales. So that hopefully completes that piece with Salt Lake City. Whether they'll purchase in the future, I don't know. We'll see.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve surplus resolution 24-01-03.
That. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes, and special thanks to Salt Lake City.
Yes.
Item 7, acceptance of donations.
3 donations from citizens. One from Gail Stockwell for $25 cash. Another one from Brad Marshall. He is a volunteer for organization. This is one of many that he has donated to our organization. They're very involved with our drone program. Volunteer his time, comes out on events. He's been a great partner, a great volunteer for this organization, and that donation of under $1,000, donating another drone to our drone program, which really is leading the charge in the drone arena in the state of Utah. We have many agencies come to us wanting to with our policies, our procedures, our practices. So we are leading the charge and doing just an outstanding job for those operators that are secondary assignments within the precincts and special operations. It's just a tremendous asset within the department. The third donation is 2 orthopedic beds. They approached us, wanted to donate a couple of orthopedic beds to our canine unit. So that's the last valued at a $500 donation. We handed them out to 2 of our canine handlers for their dog. I don't know what an orthopedic dog bed looks like, so. I have. We expect people to do like somebody. Suspended up. Frame. Okay. Perhaps for our oldest dogs.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept?
Make a motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you very much, and thank you to the citizens.
All right, upcoming meetings, we scheduling of additional UPD board meetings. I assume this refers to if we want once a month or twice a month. Okay. I guess we'll start there. We said that we were just gonna use it. Remind me if we do the twice a month, then we need to do it at 8:30 in the morning. on first, was that,
I believe
I'm looking at you.
I believe I've got that meeting moved. So we can go back to the.
Also, you can do
For the foreseeable future, this will be my priority, so I will do everything I can. I don't expect everybody to work around my schedule, obviously, but we've got a lot of things to tackle here, and I'll just add, since I'm speaking. I would love to get back to a single meeting, a month, but just this agenda alone, with 20 items. Can you imagine what one meeting a month is gonna look like? I just think we have too much going on to eliminate a second meeting each month for now. That's my take.
I think, I agree with that. I just think that some things, some pieces are gonna be moving here in the next couple of months that we might want.
I agree with us finalizing this interval. The piece that Nazar was talking about on space and twice a month. Right now.
Mr. Chair. So the item is to approve the annual calendar of meetings, and that's something that is done in the first meeting of the year. The special meetings can be added later, or we can add them now, but the calendar is the one that would deal with our regular meeting throughout the year. So I'd request that at least the calendar be approved, and then the board can take up the question of setting other meetings, unless you want to add them to the calendar at this point. But I think that for now, at least, we need to set a general calendar for the year for regular meetings. So that's what's before you on I assume the calendars. Let me find it.
So you're looking for a vote to approve this?
The vote to approve the calendars. The regularly scheduled meeting calendar.
If we, there's a question on that, because if we're planning to meet in 2 weeks, which would be well, we were doing it the first Wednesday. I guess I'm curious because that would be February 7th. Do we within that need to make a motion with it? Because that then would be our next meeting and not the February 15th meeting.
Yeah, Mayors, could I suggest that we stick with the 15th as the next meeting date? And then at that point, decide if we want to add another meeting, and probably it would be a good idea to be about 2 weeks after that. And because the March meeting isn't until the 21st, so I do think that a meeting between the 15th and the 21st would be a great idea. I don't know if we need one that soon is all between, because the next meeting is going to be the 15th. So
that works for me.
That works for me. I'll make a motion to approve the 2024, like, part of the meeting schedule.
Carolyn, did that
We
motion
had a motion.
already?
Carolyn, are you comfortable being a second?
Mayor?
Oh, sure.
Great.
I'm sorry.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes. And just a note on that February 15th meeting is at 9:30 a.m. instead of 8 a.m. That is the only one that's different. I assume that's just over scheduling issues.
I wasn't at the last meeting. I'm not sure if I changed anything.
I thought there was a conflict with the UFA meeting or something at the legislature. I can't remember exactly. Why the 15th got bumped to Mayor Silver Street, do you remember?
That is right. We have a UFA benefits and compensation.
That was why it got delayed.
Okay, and then. Well, okay, so we'll meet the next one and reset the schedule, but otherwise, March 1st at 9 a.m. will be the regularly scheduled meeting after that. Item 20, motion approval of November 16, 2023, December 14, 2023, the UPD board meeting minutes. Unless there's any changes to that, I would entertain a motion to accept those.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you. And then we do have a closed session to discuss the character or professional competence of an individual and discuss matters protected by attorney finding. To session.
So moved.
You really short for you there.
Is there a second?
Yes, Carolyn, second.
Okay, so Morgan, if you would call. We're gonna take a second.
Director Olson, Treasurer Peterson.
Here.
Lopez.
Here.
Reed.
Yeah.
Stevenson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Grab it.
Yes. Hello.